Hi, my name is Grace Lang with DDSAnalytics, and I'm here today to talk about the employee attrition analysis we ran for Frito-Lay's proof of concept. The purpose of this analysis is to build a model that helps predict attrition for employees, to reveal those top 3 factors that lead to attrition, while understanding some common trends of employees who decide to leave the company. When we received the data set from Frito-Lay, we noticed that the current attrition rate is around 16%, which is great news considering a compensation force study that was run in 2016 said the industry should be attrition rate is around 17.8%. So only being 2 percentage points lower is great news. However, there's always room for improvement, and especially for employee churn, which is very costly. When we received the data set, it had about 870 employees included, and it had a departmental mix of including only 3 departments. So that was one of the data risks that we called out. It was a small data set for the company, for especially as large as Frito-Lay, and not all of the departments were represented. So that's something we'd like to revisit if we have the chance. I'll walk you through the methodology really quickly. As far as data cleaning, there wasn't much to be done. The data we received was in good shape. We did remove some static variables that didn't contribute to the analysis. We utilized RStudio and R Markdown for our coding documentation. I'll walk you through some of the data exploration findings we had, the 3 models that we used in comparing the best predictors. And finally, your team has actually already received our predictions file, so we look forward to hearing how we match up against our competitors. One of the things we looked for was, are the employees leaving just looking for promotions? And what we found was that's not necessarily the case. You can see in the attrition ratings down here, they range from about 12 to 18%, but there was not one significant group that rose above the others. We also wanted to understand, are lower job levels more likely to churn? And what we found is yes, that is the case. 26% of level 1 jobs have the highest attrition rate. So those employee and entry-level positions, that's something to look into as far as understanding why they might be leaving the company. We also wanted to understand if overtime had a factor in churn, and what we can see is yes. Those that had overtime had an attrition rate of around 32% versus 10% of those with no overtime. So one thing we would like to investigate is whether or not that overtime was scheduled or unscheduled. In understanding the overtime, we wanted to see what roles had more of the overtime and contributed to the churn. Those with the highest overtime attrition was the research scientist, sales executive, lab technician, and sales reps. So looking into those sales and R&D department would be very interesting in finding if there's any type of working environment that may be contributing to the culture of people leaving. We also wanted to see if salary contributed to employee turnover, and yes, it does. Those with lower salaries definitely have higher attrition rates. So if you're not paying, they're not staying. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Just looking at the overall factors that we included in the model, we wanted to see how they ranked up against one another. And you can see overtime, monthly income, and total working years are your top 3, and years since last promotion, which I highlighted earlier, is in the bottom. So next, we wanted to talk about the models that we used to compare and find the best predictions for Frito-Lay. The first model we used was the random forest model. It's a classifier model that builds multiple decision trees and then splits the class predictions into a random set of data points, and then we'll layer in the accuracy of those subset trees. So it had an 89% accuracy, but this is not the one that we chose. We also didn't choose a linear model. However, it had a 90% accuracy. The reason why we didn't choose it is because the specificity was a little bit low, meaning it just didn't accurately guess our nose very well. The model we went for was a support vector machine. It had an 88% accuracy and an 88 to 100% sensitivity and specificity. The reason why we chose this is because it chooses an optimal hyperplane between binary variables and then uses that hyperplane to classify the future inputs. So it was a great model to leverage, especially for an attrition binary variable. In conclusion, employees who work overtime have a lower job level and potentially less experience in the workforce, maybe a segment of employees to help coach and revisit in their work and environment. We utilize an SVM model for the best predictor of employee attrition. And finally, the next steps is we'd love to rerun the model with a comprehensive departmental data set. We'd also like to revisit the model predictions after 3 additional months of data, just to make sure that the model hasn't degraded. And finally, we'd love to layer in some exit interviews to understand the why of why people are leaving, understanding if it was overtime, unscheduled, scheduled, that kind of thing. Anyways, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.